In true crime, we often see cases of ignorance of authorities and the lack of movement on cases that lead to even more crimes by those perpetrators. This one is a prime example of no matter how loud the public screams, sometimes no one in power will listen. We have to count on each other to bring awareness and to keep each other safe. And that's exactly what this YouTuber did, with a video that may have saved many lives and exposed an evil man 4 years before he was caught red-handed chasing his kidnapping victim. You were such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, and today's case I am infuriated to bring you truly because this is something that should have been acknowledged long before it was, and it was acknowledged by the community, by the people that it was affecting, but it was not acknowledged and not taken seriously by those who actually had the authority to lock up a man who had a history of doing these very same things. So let's go ahead and get into the story. So it was 2023 in New Jersey, and there was a gas station in Burlington County that would call 911 claiming to have an escaped abductee inside of their store. They claimed that this woman had run inside while being chased by a man, and she claimed he had kidnapped her. Now this was only February 7th of 2023 where CCTV would confirm this entire story. On the footage you could see a barefoot woman walking very, very quickly to this gas station door, and a man was following right behind her. You could see as she ran inside, and the gas station attendant actually slammed the door as soon as she was inside, right on this man so he could not enter. Now this employee, or the gas station attendant, was named Jamie, and she said she immediately locked the door, and the man actually was seen outside of the gas station briskly walking away, and that is when they decided to call for help, and the victim was consoled by the attendant and also given some clothes.
I heard people screaming, so I looked over, and then the lady came running like barefoot, and she was like, he kidnapped me. So we ran inside and she locked the door, and then the guy was like chasing behind her. As they were running, he was like, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this. His gig was up, you know. And then he drove by again on his bicycle. He had her ID and her cards and everything in his wallet, and he kept saying, we never leave each other's side. She was so scared though, like that was the saddest part. Like you could tell, like she was like really terrified.
Now the escaped abductee has yet to be named by authorities because this has happened so recently, but she would give police the full story. She claimed that she had met her abductor, who was a man that she was told it was named Brett Parker. This was at a New Mexico gas station in February of 2022, which was a whole year prior. She explained that she had asked him for a ride to Arizona, and they actually began a relationship after this. It seemed quite normal. However, about a month later, they had made it to California, and he ended up assaulting her. And even though she wanted to leave after that, she felt like she could not. He had taken her phone, her credit and debit cards, and would not allow her to speak to any family. She was said that she was being held against her will as they traveled the country, and by December they were in New Jersey, where they would stay for the next 2 months. Now on the day of her escape, the victim claimed that she had had a plan. She had seen this gas station because the abductor had driven past it at one point, and she knew that the door actually had a deadbolt on it, so she was hoping that would keep her abductor out if she could run to this certain gas station. So on February 7th, when this man began to choke her and assault her, that is when he actually stopped because he realized they were not home alone, and that is when she fled. Now this was confirmed by the marks found on the victim's neck by investigators, and they were also able to get the location of their home at the time, which was in Bass River Township. Now, after being held captive for almost a year, this victim became a survivor who would help put this perpetrator behind bars. Yet she nor the investigators were prepared for what was to come, and how much of a monster and a serial predator that this man had always been. You see, the home that she was actually held captive in was actually just a room. This man had been renting a room inside of a home, and he was actually located, arrested, and charged with kidnapping and aggravated assault. Now, this was 57-year-old James Perillo, not Brett Parker, as the victim had been told. While looking into James Perillo, investigators began to inform the public, because not only did they think that this man had many aliases, they also believed he had done this before. Investigators asked the public to come forward if they had any information on his crimes, on his previous victims, if they had any encounters with him at all. And due to this being such a recent case, the tip line is still open, and it's very important to share. I'll put the number on the screen as well as in the description box below.
Up the phone and call, completely anonymous. Your identity will be protected. We just want to know if you have any information.
So James Perillo was officially charged with first-degree kidnapping, second-degree strangulation, and aggravated assault, and third-degree criminal restraint. He's also facing charges for hindering apprehension, as well as obstruction of justice for refusing to give a DNA sample. Now, of course, that was a big red flag for investigators, not wanting to give DNA. Possibly that could connect him to other incidences, but investigators in New Jersey began reaching out to other jurisdictions to have possible cases connected. And at the bond hearing for James, prosecutors claimed that they already had found evidence of similar predatory conduct that had occurred in other states. But a video that was posted 9 years prior in 2014 showed a little bit more about his personality. He was bragging that he was in federal prison for a really long time.
If a cop pushed me at all, I would punch him out, kick him, try to stab him. I have no problem with it. I still don't.
Now, when James' photo was released to the media, tips began coming forward from the public. Many people informed police that this was something they were trying to raise awareness about for years. You see, this had become something huge online, and investigators were told that there was actually a transgender woman named Kira Moon who back in 2018 went hiking on the Pacific Crest Trail in California when she would vanish. You see, she had the trail name of Steel, and she was a 62-year-old woman who was just wanting to get out and about and live her life, and that is when she would vanish, and friends and family believed that she was actually being held against her will by this man she had told them about before she vanished, which was a man who was going by Jim or Jay Cirillo. The two were actually photographed together prior to the disappearance, and she had posted this photo on her Facebook, and she allegedly told her friends and family that they were in love and decided to hike back together. However, some of them were saying that they believed that she was a lesbian, but they didn't really know for sure. So it was all just very strange and abrupt, and then there was no communication at all. Now, she did eventually communicate with them again, but they had a phone call with her, and they realized that she just didn't seem like herself. She seemed like she was reading off of a script, and she was giving different stories to them, and it was still quite strange. But by September 28th, her family actually had finally gotten her location and were headed to pick her up. Now, she was very worn down, and we will get a little bit into her version of the story from her own words, but the man that was with her during this hike, allegedly, the one she had been photographed with, was not there when the family arrived. Now, Kira would tell a backpacker.com source about what happened, and she would say that she had been with Jay, who she knew as Jay, and he told her that he was a retired Navy SEAL, but had actually been blown off a cliff at one point and had broken some ribs. This was recent, so he was struggling to move, and they kind of bonded over this because she was older and struggling to move as well, and she said he seemed nice enough, and she wasn't sure really about how he felt about him. She felt like she was a cougar because he was about 10 years younger. Then they went on a hike together, and she took this photo of them, posted it on Facebook, didn't think much of it, and out of nowhere, Jay began screaming at her for hours. She said that he was forcing her to look him in the eyes as he berated her, and that he said that he was gay and that he had actually escaped a host of pursuers. And this was because he had lied to the Navy about his sexual orientation, and the media was reporting on it, saying that he was Caitlyn Jenner's lover. So he told her that she was ruining his life by posting that picture. Now, after this, everything changed because Kira was held in an abandoned ranger station for 4 months. and he was always watching her. She said that he began to rape her, and that anytime he was hurting her, he had this smirk on his face as though that is what he was waiting for. She said that he took her SIM card and she didn't fight back because she thought that he could snap her neck in 2 seconds. She said that they would go out hiking every once in a while, and that Jay would tell the others that they were married for 5 years, and then he went to actually buy her a cheap ring she was forced to wear. He once allegedly had told her, "I should kill you, bury you in the desert. I'll kill your family. I have some shady friends who will come and take care of your kids." She decided at this point she would need to do something to survive, and so she began to tell Jay that she wanted to go to town with him to help him get the groceries and things that they needed. And so a few weeks later of going with him all the time, he began to trust her. He left her outside the store with the backpacks, and she took this as her opportunity to run. She ended up running to this car, jumping in the back, and they would take her to an urgent care center. When they called the police, she was taken to the hospital, and he was actually arrested in the store. However, he was held in jail for only 17 days. Kira's family tried to fight this, but they were told that it was her word against his, even though she had 4 broken ribs when she arrived at the hospital and had been severely beaten. This man was never charged with the crimes against Kira Moon, and she actually became homeless after this because he had spent all of her savings. She passed a few months later in what is being referred to as a suspicious house fire, which was said to be caused by electrical failure.
A woman is dead after a fire this morning at a mobile home park in Contra Costa County. It happened about 1 a.m. on Bethel Island at Santiago Island Village on Gateway Road. East Contra Costa fire protection crews did manage to rescue 4 other people inside the mobile home. Authorities say there is no fire station nearby, so they had to wait for crews from Antioch to respond.
This man, people had the picture of, they had the name Jay or Jim Perillo that he was going by, but they didn't know exactly what his identity was, and he had since been released and fled. But at this point, hearing what was happening with this other woman and seeing the picture of him on TV, they all believed that this man was actually James Perillo. 5 years after Kira Moon, he was continually abducting women. Because all the way back in 2018, Facebook posts and pages were being put together for missing people on the Pacific Crest Trail. It spread to Reddit, it spread to YouTube, and in 2019, a woman named Sara Dhooma had warned women on this very trail about a man going by Jay or Jim with the trail name Medic in a YouTube video. She began to say that she went hiking on that very trail and that she had met this man and felt the evil emanating from him.
I'm making this video to give a very serious warning to those who are involved with the Continental Divide Trail. So this is hikers, trail angels, members of trail communities, and so forth. So last year I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. I remember when I came into Warner Springs, I was meeting other hikers, and I met this man who was going by the trail name of Medic. And you know, sometimes you get a bad feeling in your gut. I instantly got a rotten vibe from this guy. Just the way he looked at me, things that he was saying didn't quite add up. Just seemed like he was lying and deceptive, and it was just reptilian. So I felt I need to stay away from this guy. He said some creepy things to me, and it was not a good interaction. I also met this wonderful woman named Kira Moon, and she was going by Steel Magnolia as her trail name. And she's the older woman, and she was vibrant with a big smile, and she came over to me and struck up a conversation like, hey, you're a solo woman also. We chatted about the trail and things we were looking forward to seeing along the Pacific Crest Trail. And at the end of it, she gave me a big hug, and she said, you stay safe out there. And I said, same to you. And those two were hiking together. I wanted to tell Kira Moon how I felt about the encounter that I had there at Warner Springs, but she thought he was like an angel. So I thought you know, maybe my vibe is off and I won't say anything. So fast forward months later, and I see in the PCT 2018 Facebook group missing posters for Kira Moon. You know, when I heard that she was missing, and I heard all the terrible things that had been done to her, like, it made me so angry. It made me so angry inside. He's a con man. He has a history of abusing women. He has a history of conning people and taking their money. And then I heard he is on the CDT right now. This man is a predator. He's a monster, and people are afraid. They're afraid. They don't want to like warn people and say this guy is out there and he's coming. But I think it's important for the community to know that this guy is out there. If you see this guy, stay away. He's very dangerous. He's very violent. Is unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do. And I may be putting myself a little bit at risk by talking out about it, but I don't care because it is important for everybody to know.
Now, I will link her video, her full video below, as it's extremely brave to be speaking up about something that nobody wants to talk about, and something is so terrifying. She also then updated saying that this medic man had been run off of the trail in New Mexico by a sheriff after her first video was posted, and she believed that he was now going by a new trail name, Chemo, because he said that he was walking for awareness about cancer because he had cancer. However, many were quickly finding out that he was a con man. And if these hikers weren't being abducted by this man, like Kira was, they were being conned out of money and supplies.
So since I posted the video back in Chama, New Mexico, calling out Medic for being a liar on the trail and calling to light some of his past terrible things he's done in the past, what has happened? So basically, since that video came out, a whole bunch of people came forward and said, yes, they have also been victims of his scams. Luckily, I had not heard of any more violent behavior, just a whole lot of lying and eliciting sympathy and people giving him money and so forth. So the police department, the sheriff departments of those counties got involved. I spoke with some sheriff departments as well as people who had been scammed by him, and basically he was run off of the CDT. He was run out of the state and he was driven away from New Mexico. Then we kind of didn't know what happened to him, but he has resurfaced in California. So he is hiking a trail in California, not the PCT. He's hiking a coastal trail there, and he's claiming that rather than subject his body to cancer, he's decided to walk for cancer awareness, and he's going by the trail name of Chemo. And he has an Instagram page, and he is getting a lot of money and assistance and food, and he's really continually to con and swindle people. There is actively investigations being done into his past to see if he can be connected to the disappearances of some other hikers and people in the outdoor community. There is a working theory also that he may indeed be a serial killer. Now, I do not know if this is true or not. If it is true, I'm not surprised. If it's not true, well, you know, doing the due diligence and ruling him out is also a very, very good thing. I've also been receiving some threats from people, so you know that's not a good thing. Since I posted that video, and I've also been receiving a lot of pushback saying that I'm only, you know, talking about the safety stuff to drive views to my YouTube channel, and that is absolutely not true at all. If there is another way that I could get the information out to a large group of people in the quickest amount of way, I would use that way, but I have a YouTube channel and it's public, and I'm very honest on it, and I'm gonna continue to do whatever I want to do and call out bad behavior along the trail.
Now, this YouTuber suspected even back in 2019 that this man was a serial killer. and others were saying that he was then going by the name Phantom on the trails. But although the hikers were kind of creating a community within themselves to keep each other safe, law enforcement were not being as thorough, and if they would have been, it might have stopped the most recent kidnapping of the woman who has just now escaped. But as you'll find out, James Perillo had a history of getting away with crimes and receiving very short sentences that weren't linked together. None of his crimes were ever linked until now. You see, over the years, online sleuths were putting pieces together and connecting his crimes themselves. And they found that back in 1996, an episode of Unsolved Mysteries aired about a wanted man named Tony DeCampo.
Join me. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
He was wanted for assault and questioning in a very strange kidnapping case. This happened 3 years prior to the episode airing, so in 1993, when a man arrived at a Florida truck stop asking for help because he couldn't hear or speak because of the war. Now, the clerk there was named Valerie Eric, who was a mother of 3. She felt really bad for this man and ended up actually allowing him to stay at her home. They would write notes to each other, and he wrote a note one day to her asking if she would marry him. And she actually did refuse this, but he then was telling her more about his family, saying that his father was a mafia kingpin, but that he wanted out. Now, after about a month of living together, this Tony would fall and hit his head and would miraculously have his hearing and speech returned. He began to tell Valerie and her mother that the mafia actually had a contract out for him and that their family was now in danger as well. They all fled with Tony to Tampa for safety, so he could go and talk to his father for protection. But when he couldn't find his father, they went to a motel, and he asked Valerie's mother to pay for everything so they could not trace it back to him. Now, at this point, Valerie's stepfather, so her mother's husband, began to get worried when he couldn't get a hold of anybody. And so he began to follow his wife's credit card transactions all the way to Tampa to find them. And he followed them in a car and ended up shooting out the tires, or trying to. He missed, and what Valerie and her mother didn't know was that this was someone that they loved and knew. They were told by Tony that this meant that the mafia was really after them and getting closer. Tony then went and dropped Valerie's mother and her children off and told Valerie that the mafia had taken them. But Valerie was stuck with Tony, and for the next 2 months she was taken across 6 different states, and Tony began to beat and sexually assault her. Now, one beating was so severe that she actually had to be taken to the hospital, where she was asked if he had beaten her, but she said no, because she did not want the mafia to hurt the children if they had them, and she had no idea where they were at this point. But on April 11th, after 4 months on the run, Valerie actually decided to gather the courage to make a phone call back to her home. And to her surprise, her mother and children actually answered the phone, and they were completely okay. The mafia didn't have them because it wasn't a real story. And that's when everything began to click into place. She ended up getting away, and then she ran to the police, who then rushed back to the hotel to arrest this Tony man, but he was gone. The search for him began, but no one was able to locate him at all, and he was described to have tattoos all over, such as a peacock, a shark, a skeleton holding a red rose. He had the words Star, Cricket, Tamara, Angela, and Val, and nobody could find him. Now, once Valerie got back home, everyone was telling her just to forget about what happened and go on with her life. But she really couldn't, because he wasn't caught. And until he was, she could not live with somebody else going through what she had gone through. So Unsolved Mysteries, when they aired, were hoping to help locate this man from this segment. And 2 years later, he was found, but for a completely different case. So this was in 1998 when Tony DeCampo was arrested for threatening Bill Clinton, who was the president at the time. He was sent to prison for this, where it was then revealed that Tony DeCampo was not his real name. This was James Perillo. Between the time that he had kidnapped Valerie and that he was arrested for threatening the president, James had also held up a yacht with 9 people on board in a 4-hour standoff, and for that he pled insanity and was acquitted.
It was suggested to us to basically get a hold of it, storm it, and sink it. And during that incident, the two other members of Greenpeace fled, had a standoff with the SWAT team. The only person that was wounded was myself. And I was charged with over 28 felonies. I was tried. I received 19 years in prison. And I just got out.
Now, after threatening the president by 2002, he was released, but he would be arrested once again because he was believed to help a woman named Laura Michelle Lyde kidnap her children from their father. For this, he was sentenced to 3 years, and she was exonerated eventually. Now, he would have gotten out in 2005 and was said to be scouring the country, preying on who knows how many other women. But 13 years later, he would hold Kira Moon hostage on that trail. And 4 years after that, after hikers had been calling him out for years, he would move on to abduct this unidentified woman who would escape at the gas station. Many hikers have come forward to say that they have seen this man, they've experienced him. He's not a pleasant person. However, he can act like it in the beginning.
Sara Dhooma is an experienced hiker who posted that warning to other backpackers 4 years ago.
I could just feel like something evil emanating from him.
Now, some of his aliases are said to be Mike Parker, John Parker, Tony DeSoto, Tony DeAngelo, Frank Perillo, as well as the others that were mentioned prior. He could have used any of these names or even different trail names that we mentioned. But if you know any more sort of names that he used or aliases or alibis or any sort of crimes that he committed, please contact the authorities. You can leave it down below if you'd like to start a conversation down below about anything that you have learned or heard or read about online. Chances are many more victims will be coming forward in the months to come, and they deserve justice for what this man has done. Now, a national park ranger named Andrea Langford has claimed that she was actually researching his crimes and activities for years for her book called Trail of the Lost. I'll have it linked down below. Now, from what I gathered, she believes that James Perillo would start off being this extremely charming and romantic man, but then the mask would come off and he would be controlling, mean, manipulative. He would fake illnesses. He would pretend to be mute. He would pretty much say anything that would make him look vulnerable to attract vulnerable women. I truly think that there will be more victims coming forward, and I hope that they know that they no longer have to live in fear with him behind bars, and that they feel comfortable enough coming forward, even if it's anonymously. I think it's so important to get your justice and to make sure that this man is fully held accountable for his actions. And I hope this time he is kept in prison where he belongs instead of just being held for 17 days and then released. But do you believe that James' crimes ever escalated to murder? Was he a serial killer, a serial kidnapper, a serial predator, or all of the above? Now, the importance of what this YouTuber Sara did is so valuable in a time where our voices can be heard, even if it seems that you are being ignored by those who have the job of helping you but aren't doing that job. And so if we can use our voices to really let others know about possible dangers or anything that can keep one another safe, it's so important. And she did this years ago, before this was ever in the news, before anyone ever wanted to acknowledge it, because she felt this sort of pull to make sure that others were safe. And I think that's just amazing. The selflessness she needed for that, and the bravery to speak out against something that is terrifying. I hope you go and leave her so much support on her YouTube channel. She does a lot of hiking videos. Just go give her so much support, because people like that are what make this world a better place. And because of her, because of all of the people who worked so hard for years to put all this information together to really find who this man was, we now know just what a monster he is. So I do hope that the investigators are looking hard into this, and that it really becomes a full-blown investigation all over the United States for what this man has done. I'm thankful that there has yet to be any murder victims, and that they have all, made it out alive from that. But that doesn't mean that they didn't suffer, and it doesn't mean that it wasn't a very hard journey afterwards. And especially with Kira, she didn't live much longer than that, and that is truly heartbreaking. So send so much love to the survivors, to the victims, and to the people who want to speak out and maybe you don't have the courage just yet. So don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces.